Thank you for still being around. It's very difficult to come in with a presentation after so many amazing presentations from my fellows. What I looked into and what I kind of also titled my work with was going beyond the magic of the twin transition. For some of you who are familiar with the twin transition, this relates to the green transition and the digital transition reinforcing each other. And somehow I stumbled onto military and defense in that mix, especially in the context of EU institutions. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Initially, I wanted to look at the techno-solutionist narratives across EU and Latin America in the context of climate emergency. But I ended up looking specifically on the twin transition narratives in the EU space because I realized that the twin transition is a very global north thing framework, and especially in the context of the COVID recovery and the war in Ukraine, which have influenced a lot this framework. I looked at it within 4 years, but I will address the time frame in a moment as well. So a very quick asterisk before I go into my findings. I looked at this narrative for 4 years, and it was quite difficult to grasp it because it merged and it shifted and it morphed throughout the 4 years quite intensely. And it continues to do so in 2024. I didn't address 2024 as a year so much in my work, but I can see it all around me as extremely influential, with a lot of events shaping the conversation around the twin transition and its role. So the first finding was around the characteristics of the narrative. The twin transition came from a green transition, the European Green New Deal, that introduced the green transition, and then the digital aspect of it, the technological as a tool to get us away from fossil fuels layered on top of it. So we ended up with the with the twin transition as the green and the digital, sometimes after 2019. In the public space, after 2022, we've seen a huge increase into defense as also being attached to the twin transition. For example, in conversations around critical raw materials that were initially meant to source this twin transition, they were also presented as, and by the way, they're also really great for air and defense. And now, unfortunately, in 2024, we're looking at the European institutions talking primarily about digital and defense incentives to this transition. Generally, the narrative has been framed around COVID recovery, war in Ukraine, a lot of resilience and war language. But also the twin transition has been a key tool for ensuring economic security and geopolitical positioning, which is quite far away from its initial purpose. There's been open strategic autonomy, a conversation around industry level resilience and supply chain, but also, like I mentioned earlier, a very important focus on resourcing materials and grabbing materials from wherever we can. When it comes to the main arguments around the twin transition and why it is so great, these are mainly around the creation of economic opportunities, and here the whole conversation of corporate social responsibility lays, the geopolitical advantage that is seen into this twin transition, solutions to the environmental crisis, but also the contribution of the twin transition to national security. And I want to dive a bit deeper specifically into this military aspect of the twin transition, because for me it was quite novel and yeah, mind-blowing. I have to say, personally, I went through some carousels of emotions throughout this fellowship as I was finding out new topics. The way the twin transition intersects with security is, well, first of all, through the importance of critical raw materials, and some scholars are already looking at this and the importance of ensuring materials for geopolitical security, not only for green technologies, but also for ammunition. And this has also happened very much in the EU as well. But also what has happened is that green technologies, part of the twin transition, can also be used for military and defense purposes. They can both be put under the public interest category. And in some pieces of legislation, public interest, even public interest in whole industries can be subject to exceptions from scrutiny in Europe. And for some of you who know, but I will mention it anyway, the EU does not have a mandate to govern military expenses. So having in some form of incentivizing the military industrial complex through twin transition, which was already sourced, was a great win for our elected and non-elected officials. And I mentioned already funds. It's a very important topic. The funds that were initially meant for twin transition and resilience in terms of making sure the planet on fire is becoming more resilient. The resilience has been reinterpreted in the past 4 years as military defense security resilience. And through this reinterpretation, a lot of public funding has been actually diverted from twin transition to security and defense. This is mainly around the narrative. In terms of actors involved, there were political, industry, and funding important ones. Besides the EU institutions, I will mention specifically member states such as Germany and France that have important interests in car manufacturing industries as well as defense. Defense agencies, NATO as well, but also industry alliances such as the Industry Alliance for European Green Digital Coalition. Sounds like green screen almost, except it's industry. And weapons industry. In terms of funding, we've had the European Investment Bank, a very important actor player, and the EU's own fund for research and development being, again, diverted in that space. Finally, the third finding is a very sad one regarding the co-opting of just transition by our officials. For example, Thierry Breton criticizing turning a blind eye from the sourcing of materials from mines far away from our homes and conveniently closing our eyes on how they are sourced, only to promote green extractivism and the return to onshoring in Europe of materials such as lithium. I will jump really quickly because I'm timing myself and I see that I'm out of time. But when it comes to the value added of this research, I think it was very important to bring in the defense security conversation in the analysis of digital and environmental space, but also reflections within spaces such as EDRI in terms of the importance of military awareness raising in existing communities. And I mentioned there are some forums where this conversation took place, but also personal reflection. What does it mean for me to study this topic per se? And in terms of next steps, I'm hoping to have this research turned into a podcast with reactions to the findings, but also think of what does a theory of change look like beyond policy, because policy is quite of a limiting aspect here. Articulating alternatives, what does it mean to have community and planet-centered technologies, or bringing models that already exist, especially in spaces outside global north, bringing them here, but also questioning what does it mean to fund or defund the military. And finally, coalition building, both across topics, but also geographies. Thank you.